My father-in-law loves to say that business is a jungle and only lions survive. It's his favorite metaphor. He uses it at dinner parties, at board meetings, and most frequently, when he's looking down his nose at me. For the last 10 years of my marriage, Arthur Blackwood called me a sheep. He called me mediocre. He called me the dead weight dragging his daughter down. He told anyone who would listen that I lacked the killer instinct required to sit at the big table. Today, at 9 o'clock in the morning, in this boardroom with its panoramic view of the city skyline, the sheep just bought the entire jungle. And the first order of business is very simple: turn the lions into decorative rugs. Arthur is standing in front of me right now. His hands are trembling on the polished mahogany table, vibrating so hard they're making a faint tapping sound against the wood. His face has gone from the red of arrogant rage to the ghostly white of absolute, terrifying understanding. Next to him, my wife Amanda is crying. But let's be clear, these aren't tears of sadness. These aren't tears of regret over a lost love. These are tears of financial panic. She just realized that the man she abandoned this morning, the man whose divorce papers she forced on me to protect her future, is the same man who now owns every single cent of the family empire she expected to inherit. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To fully understand the magnitude of the destruction happening in this room, you need to know the complete story. You need to understand the decade of silence. You need to understand how a man they called mediocre silently built enough power to buy his tormentors' world and then watch them crumble from a front-row seat. My name is Liam Cross. 10 years ago, I married Amanda Blackwood, the only daughter of Arthur Blackwood, founder and CEO of Blackwood Industries. To the outside world, Blackwood Industries was a titan of automotive component manufacturing. It billed approximately $200 million annually. It was stable. It was profitable. But Arthur didn't want stability. Arthur wanted glory. He wanted his name on the Forbes list. He wanted yachts bigger than his competitors and a mansion in the Hamptons that would make other businessmen envious. I met Amanda in college. She was studying art history. I was studying corporate finance. She was beautiful in that devastating way that makes rational men make irrational decisions. She had an energy that pulled you in, a promise of a life less ordinary. We started dating in our sophomore year. We got married 2 years after graduation. I thought I was marrying a partner. I didn't realize I was auditioning for a role in her family's theater. The humiliation started on our honeymoon. We were in the Maldives, at a resort I had paid for with my entire savings for my first 2 years at a financial consulting firm. It wasn't the most expensive villa on the island, but it was ours. It was honest. On the second day, Amanda received a call from her father. I was on the balcony, but I could hear her voice through the glass doors. "Yes, Dad, it's nice," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "No, it's not the Four Seasons. It's more quaint." "Yes, Liam paid for it. I don't know exactly how much he makes, but I think it's around $60,000 a year." "Yes, I know. It's not what you expected for me. But I love him." That last line, "but I love him," sounded less like a declaration and more like an apology. When she hung up and came out to the balcony, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher at the time. Now, looking back with the clarity of 10 years, I know exactly what it was. It was disappointment. "My father wants you to work for him," she said, not asking but telling. "He says he needs young people with financial education. He says you're wasting your time at that consulting firm. It could be good for us, Liam. We could be set." I wanted to say no. I wanted to build my own career, step by step. I had offers from bigger firms in New York. But Amanda insisted. She used the word family like a weapon. So I accepted. I accepted because I thought marriage was about compromise. I didn't know yet that for the Blackwoods, compromise meant submission. My first day at Blackwood Industries set the tone for the next decade. Arthur received me in his office. He didn't get up from his desk. He didn't offer me a coffee. He didn't shake my hand. He simply pointed to a chair in the corner and said, "You're going to work in accounting. Downstairs. Your job is not to be a hero. Your job is not to have ideas. Your job is to not screw up what I built." "Understood." "Understood," I replied. For the next 10 years, I became invisible. I worked in that basement accounting department. I analyzed every number, every contract, every transaction. And I discovered something that would become my greatest weapon. Arthur Blackwood was a mediocre businessman playing with money his father had left him. The company was profitable despite him, not because of him. He made impulsive decisions based on ego. He expanded into markets he didn't understand just to impress his friends at the country club. He spent more on office renovations and corporate jets than on R&D. But I said nothing. I kept my head down. I wore the cheap suits they expected me to wear. I drove the Honda Civic they laughed at. And in my free time, late at night when Amanda was asleep, I did something Arthur never knew. I started my own investment firm. I didn't use family money. I used my salary. I lived well below my means. I bought shares in tech startups nobody else was looking at because they were too risky. I shorted companies that showed the same signs of rot I saw in Blackwood Industries. I invested in cryptocurrencies when Arthur called them magic internet money for idiots. And when those investments multiplied, I didn't buy a Porsche. I reinvested them. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, and I was its most devoted acolyte. In 5 years, my personal net worth exceeded $10 million. In 8 years, I was close to $50 million. By the 10-year mark, through a complex web of holdings and leveraged assets, I had access to corporate credit lines totaling over $300 million. And nobody knew. Amanda thought I made $70,000 a year and that was my ceiling. She thought I was safe and boring. The family dinners were the price I paid for my secrecy. Every Sunday, we were summoned to Arthur's mansion. It was a gaudy display of wealth, with marble columns and gold fixtures that screamed insecurity. Arthur would hold court at the head of the table, drinking scotch that cost more than my first car, telling stories about his business conquests. And then, inevitably, he'd turn to me. "So, Liam," he'd say, a smirk playing on his lips, "how's the bean counting going? Find any missing pennies this week?" The table would chuckle. Amanda would laugh. Not a nervous laugh to diffuse tension, but a genuine laugh. She thought it was funny. She thought I was a prop in her father's play. "Dad, leave him alone," she'd say, patting my hand with pity. "Not everyone can be a lion. The world needs sheep too." "That's right," Arthur would agree, raising his glass. "To the sheep. Without them, the lions would starve." I'd raise my water glass. I'd smile. I'd swallow the bile rising in my throat. Because I was learning. The most dangerous lesson of all: arrogant men show their cards. While Arthur was busy bragging about his genius, I was memorizing his vulnerabilities. I noted every shady deal, every corner cut, every regulation skirted. I built a file in my mind and on encrypted servers. I wasn't just an accountant. I was a spy in the house of my enemy. The turning point came 6 months ago. Arthur called a mandatory family meeting. He was practically vibrating with excitement, his face flushed with the adrenaline of a gambler about to roll the dice. "I'm about to close the deal of the century," Arthur announced. "I've been in talks with a major international investment group, the Omega Group. They want to inject capital into Blackwood Industries. We're talking expansion into European markets. We're talking about doubling our valuation in 3 years. This is it. This is the billionaire tier." Amanda literally squealed. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Liam, did you hear that? We're going to be billionaires." "I heard," I said calmly. "What are the terms, Arthur?" Arthur waved his hand dismissively. "Details. Boring accountant details. You wouldn't understand the high-level strategy, Liam." "Humor me," I pressed. "What's the capital injection amount? What's the equity stake they're taking? What are the guarantee requirements?" Arthur slammed his glass down. "Why do you care? You're not on the executive team. You're in accounting. Your job is to process the paperwork after I make the decisions. Don't ruin the mood with your pessimism." Amanda pulled away from me. "God, Liam, why do you always have to be so small? This is amazing news." I nodded. I apologized. And then I went home, locked myself in my study, and made a phone call. The call was to Elena Rostova. Elena was a corporate attorney I'd met 3 years earlier at a fintech conference. She was brilliant, ruthlessly intelligent, and possessed a moral compass that aligned perfectly with mine. She believed in competence above all else. We had worked together on several of my private investments. She was the only person in the world who knew who Liam Cross really was. "Elena," I said, "I need you to create a shell company for me. Something untraceable. Multiple layers of LLCs, registered in Delaware and the Caymans. I need it to look like an institutional investment group." There was a pause on the line. Elena is too smart to ask dumb questions. "Who are we targeting?" "Blackwood Industries." A longer pause. "Your father-in-law's company." "Yes." "Hostile takeover?" "Assisted suicide," I corrected. "He's about to do something catastrophically stupid. I want to be the one holding the rope." "And your wife?" Elena asked gently. "My wife thinks I'm a failure. Let's see how she feels about that when the failure owns the deed to her parents' house." "I'll have the paperwork ready in 48 hours, Elena said. "And Liam?" "It's about time." Over the next 3 months, I watched from the shadows as Arthur negotiated with the Omega Group. He never met the principal investor. He dealt only with Elena, who played the role of the cold, hard-nosed representative perfectly. The offer we made him was a trap wrapped in gold. $100 million capital injection in exchange for only a 30% equity stake. On the surface, it looked like a dream deal for Arthur. He kept control, he got the cash. But buried on page 47 of the contract, a document Arthur was too arrogant to read thoroughly and too cheap to pay his lawyers to review properly, was a clause. The material accuracy clause. It stated that if the company's financial statements were found to be materially inaccurate at any point after signing, the debt would become immediately callable. And if the company couldn't pay the full amount within 5 days, the lender had the right to seize personal assets pledged as collateral. And Arthur, in his supreme arrogance, signed personal guarantees. He put his mansion, his yacht, his vintage car collection, and his personal investment accounts on the line. Why? Because he was convinced his cooked books would hold up. He had been lying about his numbers for so long, he had started to believe them himself. I knew the truth. I had the real spreadsheets. The difference between his reported revenue and his actual revenue was nearly $40 million. He was walking into a bear trap, and he was doing it with a smile. Arthur signed the deal on a Tuesday. That weekend, he threw a victory party at his mansion. It was grotesque. Champagne flowed like water. He hired a string quartet. He gave a speech about his visionary leadership. Amanda was radiant. She spent the entire night by her father's side, soaking up the admiration. At one point, she pulled me into Arthur's study. I thought she wanted to share a moment of excitement. I was wrong. She closed the heavy oak door and turned to me. Her face was cold, calculated. "Liam, we need to talk." "Okay," I said, sensing the shift in the air. She opened her designer purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She tossed it onto the desk. "These are divorce papers. I need you to sign them." I looked at the envelope, then at her. "You're divorcing me?" "No." "At your father's celebration." "It's the perfect time," she said, her voice steady. "Dad is about to enter a different league. We're going to be global. And let's be honest, Liam, you don't fit in that world. You're a good man, mostly. But you're small. You're content with your Honda and your salary. I need someone who matches my altitude." "Your altitude," I repeated. "You mean your father's money." "It's the same thing. Look, I'm being generous. The prenup was weak, but I'm offering you a settlement. You keep your retirement account. I keep everything else. The apartment is in my name, remember? Dad insisted on that." "I remember," I said. "There's a separation of assets agreement in there," she continued. "It's very specific. You give up any claim to Blackwood family wealth, current or future. In exchange, I won't fight you for your savings." I picked up the envelope. I pulled out the document. It was thorough. It was designed to strip me of any claim to the fortune they were about to make. "Are you sure you want to do this, Amanda? Before the deal closes?" Absolutely, she said. I want a clean break. I want to protect my future from, well, from your limitations. My limitations, I said, uncapping a pen. All right. I signed. I signed every page. I didn't hesitate. Amanda watched me with relief. She actually smiled. Thank you for not making a scene. My lawyer will file these tomorrow morning. As of 9 a.m. tomorrow, we are officially, legally separated financially. 9 a.m., I said. Perfect timing. The next morning, today, was the closing meeting for the Omega Group investment. The final formalities. It was scheduled for 9 a.m. in this very boardroom. I arrived at the building 2 hours early. I used my keycard to access the secure servers one last time. I downloaded the smoking gun, 7 years of fraudulent accounting records, revised by Arthur himself. At 8:55 a.m., Elena arrived. I watched on the security monitors as Arthur greeted her in the lobby, practically bowing. He led her to the conference room like she was the Queen of England. I waited until exactly 9:05 a.m. Then I stood up from my small desk in the basement, straightened my tie, picked up my black folder, and walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the penthouse floor. When the elevator doors opened, Amanda was standing in the hallway, checking her phone. She saw me and frowned. Liam, what are you doing here? You don't work on this floor. And frankly, after yesterday, you shouldn't be in the building at all. I have a meeting, I said, walking past her. She grabbed my arm. Liam, stop. Dad is in there with the Omega Group investors. You cannot go in there. Don't embarrass me. I won't embarrass you, Amanda, I said, gently removing her hand from my sleeve. I'm going to educate you. I pushed open the heavy double doors. The conversation inside stopped instantly. Arthur was at the head of the table, laughing at something Elena had said. When he saw me, his face turned purple. What the hell is this? Arthur shouted, standing up. Liam, get out. This is a closed executive session. I didn't answer. I walked calmly to the other end of the long table. Did you hear me? Arthur yelled. Security. Someone call security. Sit down, Arthur, Elena said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had the crack of a whip. Arthur froze. He looked at Elena, confused. Excuse me. This is my former employee. He's trespassing. He's not trespassing, Elena said, her eyes locking onto mine. He's the chairman of the Omega Group. The silence that sucked the air out of the room was heavy enough to crush bones. Arthur looked at Elena, then at me, then back at Elena. That's a joke, Arthur stammered. Liam is an accountant. He makes $70,000 a year. He drives a Civic. I placed my folder on the table. I drive a Civic because I prefer to reinvest my capital, Arthur. Unlike you, who spent the company's operating budget on a yacht you use 3 times a year. This is insane, Amanda whispered from the doorway. Liam, tell them this is a joke. The only joke here, I said, opening the folder, is Blackwood Industries' balance sheet. I slid the documents across the table. Arthur, meet the real numbers. The ones you thought you buried. You've been inflating revenue by 12% annually. You've been hiding losses in shell accounts. That's $40 million of fraud. Arthur's lawyer, a man named Peterson, snatched the papers. He scanned them. His face went pale. He looked at Arthur. Is this true? Arthur didn't answer. He collapsed into his chair. Now, I said, turning to page 47 of the contract. Let's talk about the material accuracy clause. Since these financial statements are fraudulent, the Omega Group is officially calling in the debt. All of it. $100 million. Payable immediately. I don't have that cash, Arthur whispered. We know, Elena said. That's why we're moving to the next step. Personal guarantees. I looked Arthur in the eye. Your mansion. Your cars. Your investment portfolio. Your yacht. They belong to me now. To satisfy the debt. Amanda screamed. It was a raw, primal sound. You can't do that. That's my inheritance. That's my money. She rushed at me. Liam, we're married. You can't steal from your wife. I held up a hand. Stop. Think. Amanda. Yesterday. The envelope. She froze. The divorce papers, I said softly. The ones you forced me to sign. The ones that insist on absolute separation of assets. You wanted to protect your future from me? Congratulations. You succeeded. My assets, which now include your father's entire estate, are completely protected from you. No, she whimpered. No, please. Liam, I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I love you. You don't love me, I said, and for the first time, I felt no pain, only clarity. You loved the idea of what I could give you. And when you thought I couldn't give you enough, you discarded me. Now that I have everything, you want back in? That's not love, Amanda. That's a transaction. And I'm declining the deal. I turned to Elena. Execute the takeover. Remove the current board. Appoint the interim team. Done, Elena said. I looked at Arthur one last time. He was weeping silently, his head in his hands. The lion had been declawed. Security is waiting outside, I told them. You have 30 minutes to clear your personal effects from the office. You have 48 hours to vacate the mansion. I suggest you start packing. I walked out of that boardroom without looking back. I took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the bright morning sun, and took a deep breath. The air tasted different. It tasted like freedom. Behind me, in the tower of glass and steel, the jungle was burning. And for the first time in 10 years, the sheep wasn't afraid of the fire. He was the one holding the match.